couple kings heading to the stage right now just to finalize the whole court of it all. Here with the spotlight on CannaBIZ Collect. Let's welcome not only to the stage, but to our next discussion, it's Matt Edelman, Managing Director at Strategic Tax Planning. He's here to moderate a session with Brett Gelfand, Managing Partner at CannaBIZ Collects. Let's hear it for these two fellas.
Hey, thank you everybody for joining us. So I'm here with Brett Gelfand from CannaBIZ Collects today. So one of the consistent themes that I've been hearing from just about everybody I've talked to over the last 48 hours is how expensive capital is right now and how hard it is to raise cash. So it has never been more important to make sure that you're collecting all of your receivables or as much as possible. So let's hear from Brett a little bit about how to make sure that these businesses are staying profitable. So tell me a little bit about how you got into collections for the cannabis industry.
Sure. Yeah, I used to be the CEO of a cannabis company outside of Aspen, Colorado back in 2015. Had a lot of pressure from my board. Brett, we got to increase sales. We got to sell more product across the state. So what's better than extending a credit program in 2015 in the beginning of cannabis, right? So our sales went through the roof, and I went from being, pat on your back CEO to a bill collector pretty quickly. Was calling on these accounts, day in, day out to try to alleviate our cash flow. And I ended up looking like an asshole, for lack of better words, owing a lot of my vendors money. So it just became a big problem, and the stars aligned perfectly that my father was a commercial collection attorney for over 30 years. And I realized, Dad, you got to get out of retirement. It's time to start, pushing solutions towards this industry and help a lot of these companies that are owed a bunch of money.
Cool. Did you have to break any thumbs?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Okay, awesome. So what are some of the biggest issues that you're seeing in collections? And, are there any particular states that are, especially troublesome right now?
Yeah, great questions. Carson mentioned a lot of this when she was up on stage about, the difficulty of cannabis over the last year, 2 years. There's obviously many different factors. Economic factors, oversaturation of product, tax, compliance issues that are causing a lot of pressure onto cannabis brands and operators to pay their bills. Mainly right now, out of the all the legal cannabis states that we play in, California has gone absolutely hammered, as we probably all know. Our volume of claims have gone up through the roof, and unfortunately, the quality of those claims are diminishing because there's only so much blood that you can pull from a turnip, and a lot of these companies are drying out really fast. So what we're seeing is the importance of escalating collections faster than ever, and really the nice guy finishes last in this industry right now, because once a company goes out of business, and unless you have a personal guarantee, you're pretty much SOL. And what's happening, just like it happened to me in Colorado, is after some companies start extending credit terms, it's kind of a domino effect. And the more advanced the state or the market, such as like Michigan now, is becoming an issue with collections. So the longer the states are around, the more that companies start extending credit to have a competitive advantage, and the more issues come about with collections and delinquencies.
Okay, cool, very interesting, thank you. So are there any particular tips that you have as far as just how to reduce late pays in general?
Yeah, there's a plethora. I would say number one, don't take it lightly when it comes to spending a little bit of money on an attorney to review your contracts and terms of service before you do a deal with customers. If you're ever going to think about extending any sort of credit terms at all, treat yourself as a bank. I mean, you are a bank. You're giving a free loan, essentially, if you're ever doing trade credit. And because so many cannabis companies don't have access to capital, that's why they're asking the vendors for trade credit. So you should treat yourself as a bank, and that means making sure you have proper default language, making sure that you have interest language, making sure that you have a solid contract with signatures, not just on your invoice, but you need to actually have a signature on an agreement before you do business with a customer to ensure that if they do go in default, that you have recourse to collect. And you could even add cost of collection and legal fees, which makes our job easier and also can make sure that you're not paying out of pocket to use an agency if you have to collect your money.
Yeah, certainly if you're going to extend credit, make sure you got a solid contract.
100%. And if it's enough money where it could really hurt you and bring you, down a little bit, like your business could be detrimented big time if you're extending a certain amount of credit. Let's say someone's asking you to, for $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. It's all relative based on how big you are as a business. But let's say it's enough that it could really hurt. You can even try your best to get a personal guarantee. There's nothing better than a personal guarantee, a signed personal guarantee from one of the owners, because if the company goes out of business, which is happening like lightning right now in cannabis, cannabis companies are going out of business so quick because they're an LLC or a corporation, there's nothing you can do. The amount of phone calls I get on a daily basis to say, hey, can you go after debtor ABC, but they just, sold or they went out of business yesterday? No, we can't do it unless you have a personal guarantee. I know it's very challenging and a lot of companies will not want to sign that, but if it's enough money and it's a big enough deal for them, you should try to get that signed.
Yeah, that's interesting. So in the tax work that I've been doing recently, as far as claiming credits, we do a lot of work up front without getting a retainer or deposit. So we are usually asking for a personal guarantee. And I'll say there's remarkably little pushback. I mean, there's a lot less, at least, than I would have expected, from getting a personal guarantee. So yeah, definitely a good idea, for sure.
Yeah.
So how does a business get started with CannaBIZ Collects?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You just have to sign a contingency fee agreement. So most collection agencies in general charge contingency only, which means, if we can't collect for you, you're not going to pay us a dime. If we're successful, we're going to charge you a percentage on any monies collected. All you really have to do is submit a claim via our website, and we start working for you. If we're not able to collect, the next step is recommending litigation. And our firm to date has processed close to $90 million of cannabis debt. All we do is focus in cannabis. So $90 million and almost 4,000 debtor claims have come through our system, which means more than likely we've had experience with some of these, we call them bad actors or characters in the space, which is going to help alleviate some of these problems way sooner than maybe trying to handle it on your own or going through another agency. So after you essentially submit a claim, we'll look in our database to see if we have any other contact that we need to get in touch with these debtors. We'll work the claim, phone calls, demand letters, emails, text messages, whatever way we can make contact, try to settle or mediate the account. If we're not successful and they're ghosting us as well, that's when we'll reach out to the client and say, hey, I think it makes sense to litigate. And we've got an exclusive attorney network across the country that can help litigate accounts on a complete contingency basis, because I do not believe in throwing good money after bad, especially right now in cannabis. And sometimes people prefer to pay an attorney high attorney fees hourly to go chase a debt, which might not ever be collected, or even they could acquire a judgment in a year from now, but there might not be any assets. So I wouldn't recommend chasing bad money with good.
Certainly. Awesome. Thank you. So, how successful have you all been as far as, going after these uncollectible accounts?
I would say I never thought that I'd be running a collection agency myself. My dad always tried to get me in business with him when he was running a large law firm and agency, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to be running a collection agency. And after dealing with what I dealt with in Colorado as the CEO of a cannabis company, it is so extremely frustrating to be owed money. And I realize, as a collection agency, it's a very recession-proof business. Actually, the worse the industry gets, the more business we actually have to work. So it's been a great business model for us, especially because of our expertise, mine in cannabis, my father's in collections, and we're seeing a lot more volume of claims, like I said before. The issue is, which is always going to be the issue, is the quality of those claims. And the quality of those claims come down to how soon our clients are submitting those claims to our agency. And when's that point from passing it off from an internal AR team to a collection agency? And that's very dependent on a case-by-case basis of your company's cash flow, your company's economic needs at that time. Some people have enough capital to cover them for 6 months or so. I never think that you should be holding on to a past due account for more than 90 days right now in cannabis. You should be sending a final demand letter internally from your president or your general counsel, or however you want to make it seem as intimidating as possible, and say you have this day and time to pay, or else you're forcing us to escalate this to collections. If they're not paying you by that time and date, then it's not going to be that easy for us to collect either. And that's the time that you need to pass it off to an agency. So we have the best shot of becoming what we call the squeaky wheel to make sure that you're a priority to get paid before the company has bigger problems or goes out of business.
Awesome, awesome. So, working with your father who has, a long history in collections, are there any particular issues that you've run across that are, specific to the cannabis industry, and why does that make it, advantageous to work with a business like yours that focuses specifically on that?
Yeah, awesome question. I mean, collections in general, it's not rocket science. It's more of an art, and it's kind of like having a great salesperson on your team. I would say our biggest value add is the 6.5 years of us doing this and the data that we have. We know the context and we know the contacts at the industry to know who to get in touch with and the issues pertaining each debtor. So I would say versus any other large agency, having an agency that knows this space particularly is a huge advantage versus just trying to chase an account that you have no business chasing.
Yeah. And I'm sure your contacts can give you a little extra leverage in a lot of situations too.
100%.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Brett. I wanted to open it up and see if anybody else in the crowd had any particular questions for Brett. You can come on up and grab the mic if you'd like.
Perfect. I think we
Okay.
you got one question, and then I think we probably hit time.
What's the biggest and what's the smallest debt you've collected in cannabis?
Biggest would probably be about 1.2 million that we've been able to settle, and smallest we work anything over $1,000.
Okay, well, awesome. Thanks, Brett, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you, guys.
Yes,
Thank you.
Brett Gelfand, Matt Edelman. Keep the applause going for these two gentlemen. Thank you.